Saw in a comment someone wrote to me in the video about reincarnation. I was talking about how reincarnation isn't really dualist. It's not really like, oh, you have a ghost substance in your body that exits your body and travels to a different location in space and time. It doesn't really work like that because that's dualism. Buddhism is not dualism, it's monism, and reincarnation is thought of in a dualistic way, but that caused problems, and they came up with a solution that was monist. So reincarnation isn't really what you think it is. And someone wrote a comment saying, "Oh, what about like out of body experiences or near death experiences?" Um, I've had a near death experience. I had a near death experience, and I am I'm very well trained in advanced meditative techniques to be able to induce out of body experiences. I can do it right now at any time. And in fact, that is how I induced my near death experience. Um, I was comfortably reclined and meditating. I was not near death. My life was not threatened. I was perfectly healthy in body and mind, and I simply was using meditation. A lot of people who have had near death experiences refuse to hear that you can induce a near death experience. Or maybe they'll cope somehow by saying, oh, because you weren't near death, it wasn't really near death experience. The, the term near death experience has a very specific definition, and it has nothing to do with your health or whether or not you're dying or your heart stops or anything like that. The term near death experience only comes about because Raymond Moody was studying this hallucination, which was manifesting in people who were in situations like in surgeries, not near death, in surgeries or in the ER because they were like in a motorcycle accident, stuff like that. And that's how people commonly think of it, but you can, using meditation, induce near-death experiences. In fact, I just recently heard about a study um, done where Buddhist monks were were doing meditation and inducing near-death experiences. So it's a fact. Get over it. So the reason I do these videos, the reason I've gone down this path, the reason I wrote my book and started studying like the philosophy of consciousness and the science of consciousness and neuroscience, and the reason I went to college and got a degree having to do with the brain is because I had a near-death experience and I wanted to understand exactly what happened to me. A lot of people have their near-death experience and then just kind of like, believe whatever they want to believe. A lot of times a lot of times people just, it doesn't make, someone who's not well, whatever. I say that near-death experiences are hallucinations, and I don't say it that much because I know that it angers people. I feel fine saying it though because people get angry at me for much less. So it's not like I'm trying to win any popularity contests. I use the term hallucination not in the common vernacular usage, but in the actual scientific neuroscience definition, which means basically, what a hallucination really is, what the definition really is someone standing next to you, they don't see the same thing you're seeing, basically. If it's like a visual hallucination, the person standing next to you doesn't see what you're seeing. That's it. That's all. It doesn't mean fake. It does not mean fake. A lot of people use it in that way to say, oh, that's fake, especially physicalists. But physicalists, and it doesn't matter if they use the term hallucination because um, everything is fake about the mind. The mind is just an illusion that emerges from some arbitrary level of complexity, and they can't give any more details about that. No, just shut up, stop talking. So a physicalist will use the term hallucination as in fake, but also they're saying literally everything else is fake that comes from the mind. So no, the actual definition means the person standing next to you can't see what you're seeing. So some people would say, oh, that means it's not objective. It's not an objective thing. I disagree. I think that what happens in your mind is objective because I think of the fields or the essences which are out there and the fields and the essences which are in there. For example, the color green. For example, the color green inside your head, the color green that you're experiencing. I think that is objectively real, and it's the same exact essence that is out there. That is the color green. I think it's an objective thing, and that partially that comes from my understanding that the term spirit means mind or experiences or intellect, stuff like that. Spirit has never ever has the word spirit or soul meant there is a substance inside of you that leaves your body. It has never meant that until very, very recently in our Western culture. Of course, the idea has been around for a long time, and then there was that time period in the 1700s when Descartes came up with the term dualism or substance dualism. Quickly after that, Spinoza invoked the monist God and proved Descartes to be wrong. And for a long time, up until in the 20th century, most scientists and Christians, the same thing, but we're monists. Basically, the West came from monist Neoplatonist Christians, and so did science, Western science. So it's only until very, very, very recently, due to Hollywood and postmodernism, that people really started thinking dualistically. And the idea that during an NDE or an OBE, that there is a substance inside of you that exits your body and travels to this point over here. Only until very recently did people start thinking, even though there have been near-death experiences forever. In all cultures throughout history, there have been near-death experiences. It's actually kind of a common, mundane experience. Although it is the most extreme experience a human being can have in life. It is quite common, and its definition is based upon when you have a near-death experience, there's like a list of 21 different symptoms, and if you have 16 or more of them, then you've had the near-death experience. It's more general stuff like a life review. It's not like, oh, I saw Shiva, or oh, I saw Jesus. No, like, yeah, depending on your culture, you or religion, the near death experience for a lot of people reinforces their their beliefs. That happened to me. I was an agnostic, and I had a near death experience, and it actually reinforced my agnosticism. But now that I've studied more philosophy, and I've tried to really understand what happened, I'm not an agnostic anymore. I am a monist. Now, I'm a monist after years of reading books and studying things. So, no, when I say hallucination, I don't mean fake or not objective. I mean objective. It's just within your spirit, within your experience. And so then the question is, well, if it's just an experience, if it's not real, then why is the experience like I actually am traveling out of my body? Or another, a very similar question is, well, you have a medium here who's channeling, let's say the medium thinks they're channeling a ghost, like an entity, like a person from history, like an individual person from like, and so if the medium is channeling this person from history, and they're telling you a lot about themselves and what life was like back then, how is it that person who died did not have a substance come out of their body and then end up being channeled? The answer is a monist answer, and that is that that weird stuff is not supernatural. It is natural and mundane. There's nothing weird about it at all. It's just kind of an uncommon experience. But there's nothing supernatural about it. It's really mundane, and it's a force. There's a lot of forces that are around us, and one of those forces, physical forces, is consciousness. And the way forces work is that when you combine them together, they become a single force. It's called coherence. Like in magnetism, if you take two magnets and you put them together and they align, they become a single magnet. And so basically, with that in mind, one could imagine how actually all of the magnets in the world are already kind of one magnet. Even though they're not really together, they want to be together. And there's at a certain level, their fields are interconnected. Even though it's very weak, very, very weak, and sometimes they're acting against each other because one magnet on this side of the planet is facing this way, and this one's facing like awkward way. So the fields are kind of acting against each other, and it's like it's basically negligible. They're so weak and far away. But philosophically speaking, and not just philosophically speaking, scientifically speaking, if you look at how fields are understood uh, to be like, they always describe it as, well, it's like a vector, but it goes on that way forever. So the lines, the vectors, they're going on forever. So it's what that means is that the line is going throughout the universe like for infinity. Okay. So how is it that one field on this side of the planet isn't interacting with this field on it? It's understood to be that way in science already. And so what that means is that all these different fields are interconnected and hierarchical and self-similar. And in the context of consciousness, that would be called the collective consciousness, or the world soul, or there's so many different names for it. And the collective consciousness, being a monist idea, explains all of that stuff. So, for example, the ghost from the past, the information. I don't like using the word information because it's a meaningless word used by physicalists. But you know what I'm saying. The information, the experiences from that historical person in the past have somehow been maintained. If you believe the medium, if you believe the medium, if someone can actually do that, like channel, get experiences from the past, it's not from a substance that travels from point A to point B. It is contained within the world soul, and the memories aren't like floating out there. Okay. Just like you have memories inside of your head, okay? Those memories are inside of people's heads. That's where the fields are coming from, is minds. They like actual animals and humans that are currently alive. So how do you explain someone having a near-death experience and they experience coming out of their body and seeing the room around them? The collective consciousness can explain that. Because usually that room is full of people who are looking around them. See what I mean? It's not really your consciousness that you're experiencing. Like when you're asleep, your consciousness kind of reduces, doesn't it? And for some reason, sometimes you're like, you dream and you have, sometimes you're like yourself, but like in a different place. Sometimes you're like a different character. It's kind of like a story, or it's not really you. It's like sometimes stuff is coming in from the outside and you're experiencing what other people are experiencing. And the really extreme version of that might be called a mystical or mystic dream, or a vision dream, something like that. That's actually happened to me before. One time I was dreaming, sleeping, dreaming like normal, and then in my dream, a voice said to me something about magnetism and heat and whatnot, and they showed me very technical drawing or animation kind of. And when I woke up, I immediately drew down what I saw and what they told me. And I was driven to, and this was before I wrote my book. This was before I was studying magnetism, like completely random, like, oh, okay, I have to write this down. So I wrote it down and I drew like a sequence of images to show this animation. And I was I was scouring the internet looking to see if it was like real, because it felt like I was like given real information. And it turns out that this image is in like 3 or 4 very obscure studies that I have hunted down since then. Like the actual, it shows an animation, but on paper you can't have an animation, so you have to use a sequence of still pictures. And that is exactly what I drew down. Even though in my dream I saw the animation itself, I drew down a sequence of pictures, and the sequence of pictures, exact same image with the grid. It was like a mathematical, like a function. It was actually a mathematical function that has a meaning. And that somehow when I was dreaming, when my consciousness was reduced, somehow I experienced something else that was outside of my own experiences. The collective consciousness is really the only thing that can explain that, and everything else. We're not trying to project what we think onto reality. We're just trying to understand reality. So that's really what we need to do. And then, if there's evidence and arguments which appear, which destroy your view, then you must change your view. And I am very willing to change my view again. I've changed my view a lot, and this is where I'm at, and I'm still willing to change my view, but get on my level first.